Now for step 7, I feel like there's a mistake in the instructions. They tell you Hey guys, welcome back to Revolution XRC. Welcome to the next part of my TWS VTR Kit build series. In this part of the build series, we are going to swap the suspension from using a axle mounted servo to a chassis mounted servo. Now TWS does offer you the parts to switch the suspension from a 4-link front and a 4-link rear to both a 3-link with Panhard front and 3-link with Panhard rear. Now in my case, I'm going to stick with only a 3-link with Panhard front, and I'm going to stick with the 4-link rear. If you do decide to go with a 3-link with Panhard rear, the rear instructions for switching to 3-link with Panhard is basically the same as the front. But for my build, I'm only going to stick with the front conversion to 3-link with Panhard, and I'm going to keep the 4-link setup in the rear. Now the first thing you're going to need to do is to remove the front axle mounted servo. Let's go ahead and remove the wheels and tires for better access to the axle and suspension parts. Alright, we've got the servo removed, and we can move on to the next thing we need to remove. For step 1, for the 3-link with Panhard conversion, you'll need this F rod. Just make sure it says F. Now the last thing you'll need to do for step 1 is to replace the drag link. Basically, you need to replace this rod, which is E, with F. Alright, and we finished the new drag link for step 1. Make sure the rod ends are both facing the same direction. And we'll go ahead and attach this back on to the knuckle. And that completes step 1 of the CMS conversion. Alright, after adding the drag link back onto the knuckle, you also want to remove the servo mount from the axle. Let's go ahead and do that. Alright, we've got the axle servo mounts removed, and we've also got the updated drag link attached, and that completes step 1. For step 2 of the CMS conversion, you'll want to remove the upper links. Now, since I'm only doing the front, I'm only going to remove the front upper links. And with the removal of the front upper links, that completes step 2. For step 3 of the CMS conversion, you'll need the following. The instructions say you need the A rod, but you actually need the C rod. So make sure this says C. Right there. C. You'll need this, which is part E6. You'll need 2 pivot balls. You'll need this M3x12 button head screw. And the instructions say you need 2 M3x10 countersunk screws, but these are actually M3x8, which is what is provided. Now, since the Panhard rod is going to sit on the passenger side, you'll want this upper link to sit on the driver's side. And that completes step 3 of the CMS conversion. For step 4 of the CMS conversion, you'll need parts E5, N3, and a M3x10 button head screw. Now remember, for this rig, the Panhard rod is mounted at the frame on the passenger side. So we'll go ahead and do that. I wonder if I can do this without removing items. I might be able to. I might have to use a ball end screwdriver. Actually no, this gets screwed in from the outside, so it should be fine. So take this small piece here, stick it into that little space right there. So you can see that little square piece is now inside right there. I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully you can see that. And then you take the Panhard mount and mount it from the outside like so. And that completes step 4 of the CMS conversion. Now, if you were going to do the 3-link with Panhard in the rear, you would have to do the same thing. Add this to the rear. But since I'm keeping it a 4-link rear, I am not going to do that. Now, for step 5 and 6, the steps involve removing this part of the battery tray and putting a little spacer underneath to raise it up a little bit higher. The reason for that is because with the Panhard mount in the rear, it kind of pokes up a little bit higher, so you kind of need to raise the battery tray. Since I'm keeping the 4-link rear, I am not going to touch that. So I'm skipping steps 5 and 6 because those are steps that I don't need if I'm going to keep the rear a 4-link. Now you may notice that I have this 3D printed piece right here in between the two halves of the battery tray. I created this myself. I'll put this up somewhere, probably my mini factory or something. But basically it fills up this space so that you can use a shorty battery without having it drop through the opening here. But we'll go ahead and move on to step 7. Now for step 7, I feel like there's a mistake in the instructions. They tell you to use G3 right here, which is letter E. I think you need to use G4 instead, which is letter D. Right here, if you can see, that's letter D. This piece here was too short for the Panhard rod. It shifted the axle severely to the passenger side. So I'm going to say it's going to be the piece that is labeled D, and that's the one you should use. Okay, I think the length looks a little bit more correct now. That's how it's eventually going to sit. So the link body labeled D is the one that you want. And it should sit right there eventually. And that completes step 7. For step 8, you'll need an M3x25, an M3 lock nut. Now the instructions call for an M3x12 for the upper link, but I'm actually going to use an M3x18 to go all the way through to the other side where the other upper link used to be. Alright, let's start by attaching the upper link first. And as I said, I'm going to use the M3x18, and basically it's going to go through one side all the way to the other side. Right. Now for the Panhard rod, you could actually reuse the lock nut that's here. So you don't actually need an extra lock nut, but I'm going to have to remove the lower screw that's mounting these shocks and replace that with the M3x25. Now I actually think this M3x25 is a bit long. Let's see if we can get away with something shorter, like another M3x18. Yeah, it's a bit long. And the M3x18 is too short. This M3x25 is a bit long. I actually think they should have went with a M3x20, but they don't have one, so M3x25 it is. I might just replace it on my own later on. There you go. That Panhard rod is hooked up. The upper link is also hooked up. And you can see the suspension cycle now. That completes step 8. For step 10, you'll need 2 M3x10s, 4 M3x8s, where you only see 3 here because one of them is reused from the chassis. It's currently on the chassis. You'll remove it and reuse it. And you'll need these 4 washers, and you'll also need these 2 servo mounts. And these pieces are labeled E4 in the instruction manual. So the first thing you'll want to do is remove the M3x8 that you'll be reusing, which is this one. Right there. Now you should have 4 M3x8s. Now you'll want to attach the servo. And you want to make sure that you reposition the servo horn in this direction. When you're done mounting the servo to the servo mounts, it should look like this. Notice the orientation of the servo horn, as well as these parts right here. Alright, now you'll want to carefully slide the servo in. If you can. I don't know if you can without removing everything. Looks like I can. There you go. And that completes step 10. You can see that the servo is mounted up right there. For step 11, you'll need these following parts. You'll need a spacer M5, you'll need a M3x18 button head screw, and a M3 lock nut. Now the instructions for the CMS conversion call for an M3x25. Now that is extremely long and just way too long to actually work. So I think it's a misprint in the instructions. You actually want a M3x18, and that'll give you the perfect length to accommodate the spacer as well as the link and the lock nut. I'll go ahead and add the lock nut from the top. Actually, this side was probably better. Yeah, let me back this out a little. Alright, that completes step 11. One of the biggest benefits of this CMS conversion is that you no longer have the axle mounted servo hitting this part of the bumper and binding. You'll see these marks here. That's where the servo horn was hitting this bumper on compression. I'll no longer have to worry about that, as my servo is now mounted on the chassis. And this completes this part of the series, the CMS conversion from axle mount servo to chassis mount servo, 4-link to 3-link Panhard. Once again, I've only done it for the front. You have the option to do 3-link with Panhard both in the front and the rear, but I am keeping it 4-link rear and 3-link Panhard front. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for future updates on this TWS VTR build series. Thanks for watching.